Good morning. I'm a member, I'm on the board for Rice Creek Associates, which is the group that's bringing our reflection speaker here tonight. And if you're not already a member, we invite you to join Rice Creek Associates. We do a lot of things in conjunction with this wonderful field station. So we've got membership forms over there and a schedule of upcoming talks as well. So I'll introduce Patrick Jones. I have a bio here I'm going to read. So Patrick is going to talk on biochar, putting carbon where it belongs. So Pat spent a lot of his career in the field building and overseeing the construction of biomass power plants in the Southeast and on the West Coast. Moving back to Oswego with his wife and brand new baby Pat. It's brand new baby.
Yeah, we named our son Pat. We're both named Pat. Now we got a son Pat. It sounds like
you needed a space. I know it's taking names, Chris. Max, his father and a longtime friend, Mark Egan, started Sundance Energy and developed several natural gas-fired power projects in New York, Canada, and Australia. The largest of these plants is the 1,200 megawatt Independence Energy plant in Oswego. After working for 2+ years on a large agriculture project in Cameroon, Africa, Pat became involved in the Clean Maine Carbon biochar facility in Greenville, Maine. The project started up in July this year and has been making and slowly selling the biochar produced. Now you may be asking yourself, what is biochar? But I think Patrick's going to tell us all about it. And as an incentive, well, first of all, it's a gift for everybody. There are some smaller bags of biochar that are for everybody. Everybody can take a bag. And as an incentive for joining Rice Creek, you can get a bigger bag. So if you decide to join Rice Creek today. So without any
further ado.
That's so Patrick.
Thank you. Hi. One thing about biochar you got to know about: if you put biochar that has not been charged in a garden with a plant on your lawn, it'll probably be negative for a while because it doesn't have anything in it. It's starving for microbes and food and stuff. So you got to be those little bags. If you give away, a little bit of compost or a little bit of something so that they can, get going, get charged, as they call it. In addition to what Sherry just said, I was raised about 3/4 of a mile down Rice Creek, and I spent the vast majority of my early childhood wandering around these hills, up this stream, skiing on Fallbrook Hill. I had a rope tow. It tells how old I am. I mean, it was, just past the steam engine age, so have a really kind of cool feeling about Rice Creek and all the stuff that happened up here because of all of that as kids and everything else. It's a great facility. It's great to see people here, and there's great trails and everything else. So it's good to see people, use it, and have some fun. Biochar, what is it? So biochar can be made from any kind of carbonaceous, try to use a couple of big words when I'm in here. I don't even know if it's a word, material. The first time I sent some stuff off to a lab to be sampled or to be manufactured into biochar, they sent back some from wood scraps, some from corn husks. They also sent some from the guy made them out of Triscuits. I mean, they still had the Triscuit form, but all the volatile organics were gone out of it. So at high temperature, without much oxygen, you drive out all those volatiles and you end up with carbon. And the carbon we're making is probably between 90 and 93% carbon content. It's a very high carbon content. And it's made at very high temperatures. It's made at between 1800 and say 2100. 2100 is really tipping the thing. And the guy that would know a lot about that, we just shipped him in all the way from Maine, Dave Mott, a local Oswegonian, is over the corner. He will sign autographs at the end if you'd like. Dave's been overseeing the operation of the plant, getting it to run. And what we use in our project is waste wood. It makes a really good biochar. It's consistent. But we're talking to people who are going to make it out of hemp. They're going to make it out of all kinds of agricultural crops and, put it back into the soil. There's a lot of work being done on it. It started, I don't know, it didn't start, but one of the things that you see is called terra preta, which is the ancient soils down in the Amazon. And when they started looking at why are those soils, so fertile when you got these big canopies and not much sun and things coming down, and they went down, they saw that there was a lot of carbon in the soils, layers down 3 feet or so. And part of that comes from, that's the way you clear land when you're in the jungle and you don't have bulldozers and chainsaws, is you cut trees down and you burn them, and they burn slowly and poorly, and you push them, and that's how you reduce it. And so you naturally end up with the carbon back in the soil at that point. So that kind of is where everybody started looking at it going, wow, it lasts for a long time. And the higher temperature biochar is more permanent than lower temperature biochar. Low temperature biochar maybe stays around for 100 years-ish before it starts to break down and go back up into the atmosphere. Higher temperature, more rigid, higher percentage carbon, they don't know. Nobody lives 1,000 years, so it's kind of hard, but that's what happened in the Amazon and stuff. So 1,000 years is a long time, and it's a great way to not only improve the soil, but for the present time, sequester carbon, put it back in the ground, kind of where it belongs, where it came from. Came out of oil, came out of coal, came out of natural gas, taking those things and burning them, re-releases it to the atmosphere. So it's a technology, if you will, that could potentially help be one of the arrows in the quiver, if you will, that could help sequester carbon and help with climate change. And it's available, it's readily available. So I already said it's made from plants, trees, crops, corn, hemp. It's all there. The carbon that's in there, you just got to drive the other stuff out of it. What do you use it for? The easiest, most readily available is agriculture. Today, the USDA has a program, it's called the NRCS, National Resource Conservation Service. And the USDA, with funding from the federal government, now has a subsidy of up to $190 a cubic yard for farmers to put it on their fields. Because the fertilizers that they've used for how many ever years have slowly but surely depleted the carbons in the soil. Some of them, and these are random numbers, but say, at a farm in the Midwest, maybe soils, and Kamal could probably speak to it better than I could, but 7 or 8% carbon, and it's been depleted so that they add more fertilizers to it. Where the fertilizers come from, oil, gas, and other places. So it's a way that the USDA sees that they could potentially sequester carbon, reduce the amount of synthetic fertilizers that are added to the soil, and also reduce the amount of water that you would need, because biochar has a great ability to hold tremendous amount of water, and it captures it and then releases it slowly. So where this is really happening in the US right now in a big way is on the West Coast, because of the agricultural businesses in California, the droughts that they've had. They're being very restrictive on what you can put on fertilizer. And then the U.S. Forest Service has a problem with forest fires, because as the trees rot, fall down, whatever, if you get a forest fire going, as we've seen in California, even on the eastern side of the Rockies in Colorado, can be tremendously devastating, human lives, businesses, and everything else. So, if you could manage the forests better and have an end product for them to justify people to do it, because it has to be economical, it'd work. And the USDA and the NRCS are really doing, in my opinion, a great job to kind of prime the pump on this and get it going. In a couple of years, they'll be able to go back to farmers and go, how'd it work out? And they can say, wow, crop yield went up 12%, or our fertilizer consumption went down 30%. You got to kind of get that out there before anybody's going to, and I don't know if there's any farmers in here or not. This is not dissing farmers, but they're not going to be taking big chances with a crop. They got a crop a year, and they can't just go throw stuff on their soil. It happened in Maine and everywhere in the country, but Maine's being a kind of leading the charge on it. They said, take sewage sludge, spread it on the fields, lots of nitrogen in sewage sludge. You can reduce your fertilizer intakes. So they did. And what else they do on the fields? They spread PFAS, forever chemicals. So now in Maine, there are farmers that are being paid to not farm. They have killed many, many cows because the cows ate the grass. The uptake from the grass uptake of the PFAS, is in the cows, in the milk. One farm I went to, the guy they killed 100 cows, bought them new cows, And a couple of years later, they had to destroy those cows because they just didn't quite understand what was going on. So there's a lot of work along those lines. So agriculture is really one of the easiest, not necessarily the highest revenue side of it, but it's the one that really has a lot of push going behind it. In Europe, a little bit in the US, they actually add it to animal feed, grind it up really fine, and put 4 or 5% into, say, cow feed or pig. It improves their digestion. The vitamins and other things that they put into the cow get absorbed better, because just like if you take a vitamin at home, a pill, some of it doesn't really get digested and taken into your system. So this slows that process down, and the cows live better, act better. It's another area that we're working to try and get biochar more readily accepted in there. And at the end of the day, the cow walks around the field and distributes biochar, fully charged with everything it needs to be. So it's kind of a win-win situation there. And when I mentioned charging it, so at the beginning I said, if you put raw biochar down, a story I heard, don't know if it's 100% true, but it could be, is that a legislator in California got some biochar, gift, whatever, I don't know, to put on the lawn. And it killed the lawn because it immediately wanted to suck the moisture up and get everybody that was working in the soil and in the ground went to the biochar. So it needs to be charged, and whether that's charged with compost, whether it's charged with cow manure, or whether it's charged with worm castings. Does anyone know what worm castings are? Not you, Dave. You know what they are. You can't do it. Worm poop. Yeah, yeah. And we just sold some biochar to a guy, Steve, the urban worm farmer, and he sells online. Steve, the urban worm. He sells how the worm bins and all that good kind of stuff. And so he's going to sell our biochar because he wants to do what some of those bags have in there, add worm castings to it so that when you take it out and use it, it's kind of ready to go. Everybody's pretty happy. There'll be a picture here, but I mean, biochar to me is kind of like a micro condominium project. All right. They need a place to live, and biochar, once it's manufactured, is so porous, it just provides a really great place for the microbes to exist. And Kamala's not said anything I've said is totally wrong yet, so I feel pretty good. Okay, all right, okay. Additionally, it's great for filtration of air and or water. If you take a look in your car, you've got a lot of activated carbon in your car, which filters, like when you shut your car down, that does a recirculation for the exhaust fumes from the gas tank. That goes through a carbon filter, and when you start up, it takes it back out again. So it's really a great sponge for some of those things. Water filtration, just like activated carbon in some of the filters you can buy, online, it does a great job of that. So there's a number of filtration avenues that biochar can act in. There is a lot of work. Cornell has done some, but there's other universities, not only here, but all over, that are looking at the effects of adding biochar to concrete products. Concrete is extremely energy intensive. It's energy intensive to mine it. It's energy intensive to crush it. It's energy intensive to make it. Actually, cement, which is the gray bag. But so it's really, and so they're looking at it as a way potentially to add it to the final product. So this building, which is LEED certified, I'm sure, I don't know if it's silver, gold, bronze, or whatever, if you used concrete in the foundations and things, it's going to stay there for a long time. So that's another avenue, but they got to make sure that it's not going to negatively affect the structural capability of the concrete. And then the other thing it does with the kind of the filtration idea is there are some people, and we're working with a group up in Maine, homemade fuels, right, Dave? Yeah, homemade fuels. And they're looking at growing hemp, and they have money from the USDA again. So they go to a contaminated field. It's got all kinds of forever chemicals in it. They're going to plant hemp because hemp seems to pick up the PFAS. Then they want to chop it, and then they want to convert it back into biochar, and in the process, destroy the PFAS. The forever chemicals get destroyed about 900 degrees C or better. You get 97% of them. There's still a small percentage going out the flue gas. So there's people looking at putting catalysts and the flue gas to catch that last little bit and go out there. But that's a pretty promising area where you might be able to remove it from the soil without, say, excavating 3 feet of the United States dirt. You know, I mean, it could be a practical way to reduce that, because there's quite a bit of farmland in Maine that the farm's not usable. The water in their wells is not usable. We've had instances where chickens, eggs, it permeates, and it is a forever chemical. It doesn't go away. It's man-made. It doesn't go away very easily. So that's it. And all while you still get carbon back in the ground. So you get a couple other uses like agriculture. You get save water, save fertilizer, and sequester carbon. It has that. It's going to take a while longer to get everybody to be a believer. I'm not the most objective, person about it, but I think I'm being as objective as possible, that it's kind of simple and it does work. So give it a shot. Our product is certified by OMRI, Organic Manufacturing Research Institute. We're selling a little bit to some soil companies that you have to have that. So it's trees grown in the woods that they're taking to a sawmill, cutting them, making them into lumber, chipping it up, what's not usable, and we take a truckload a day or a truckload every other day and turn it into biochar. We're a very early adopter. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago at Climate Week, and there was a lot of discussion about it. And I was on a panel, and I was on a panel with all the other biochar producers. There was one other guy. That's it. Because it's not really economically a big win right now. It doesn't have the traction. It doesn't get the price that it needs to justify it. So what's happened is big companies voluntarily have started a carbon credit market. And so what that is Sally's company, because Sally rides in a private jet, Sally, she's that way, a couple, 3 houses, they got to make sure their carbon footprint's reduced. So what they've done is they've said, okay, we're going to buy carbon credits from us. Now you can continue to pollute in your jet and your homes and all that good kind of stuff, but you can say, hey, I've got a net zero footprint. So that's opened up an opportunity for us and some others to say that's a revenue source that we know, because the market to sell biochar to is not vibrant. It's not jumping up and down. To get the ability to sell biochar, you got to go through some pretty big hoops with entities like Puro Earth. It's a third-party exchange where you have to do a life cycle assessment. How much did it cost energy-wise to get the wood product to the mill, from the mill to us? How much energy did you consume? We track how much water, how much fuel we use in our plant, how much electricity we put in our plant every day, because that has to be done so that they can then say, yep, Clean Maine Carbon, they're doing it the right way. And then Sally, because she is environmentally conscious, might buy another plane, but she knows she's doing the right thing. She's buying our biochar. So it's a complicated process for what really is not a complicated process. The process that's complicated is on the other side of it, making the biochar so it'll work in water filtration. They're not all exactly the same, but over the next couple of years, it's going to be pretty interesting. We were talking about the sustainability program at Oswego State. It's a possibility. And so we, Clean Maine Carbon, would say, okay, well, you want to do a little test with 17 red maples with biochar as you plant them and 17 without. It just, we would like to support it because the pump needs to be primed. It's not going to just fly off the shelves. You can go online where everybody shops, Amazon, and find biochar, Wakefield, road biochar, all over the place, and you can do it. And bags like that of biochar, just the biochar, they're selling them all the time. It tends to be a very cyclical business. It's a spring thing. People, I don't know about you guys, have y'all been here for winter yet? Not much planning going on in the winter, so you got to kind of wait till the summer comes and then rush out the door and do your spring planning and everything else. So it is a bit cyclical, but as we get into being able to do more business with air filtration, water filtration, the cyclicality will drop out of it a little bit, and you get a bigger market and you'll be able to do good things with it. And as we get bigger plants that can be more efficient, more cost effective, the price of biochar itself will come down. And that's kind of the USDA, US Forest Service, US Department of Defense. All those people are trying to, move that along for the carbon sequestration issues of it, crop benefits and things of that. That'd be a deep USDA kind of thing. So that's kind of my spiel on this. I got a few photos, David. I hope I can do this right. But click on left or right. Yeah. Okay. David.
Actually, if you go up to the keyboard and use the arrows, you have better luck.
Okay. So keyboard arrows. Where are they? All right, Dave. Don. Well, your brother's David.
My son's David.
Oh, your son's David. That's it. So what do I do?
No, let's see here.
Oh, okay. All right. There we go. Okay. All right. So they're not in any particular order, but so those are super sacks of biochar. Kind of like the ones over there. If you see the ones over there, you pick up one that says C, that's just carbon. If it says, I think PC, it's charged, and you can just feel the difference when the worm castings are in there. So this would be something that we'd be shipping out the door to any one of the kind of end users. That's what it looks like in that bag after it gets done being pyrolyzed. That's my second big word today. So pyrolyzed. So that's biochar, and it was made from that. So it's the stuff that nobody wants. It's the outside edges of the boards and things like that. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to show you this furnace in a minute. No, it's a secret, and I don't know if we want to let you guys know. And again, these aren't. We had a little technical challenges here at the beginning. So this is inside the furnace. Okay. That red color is because of the heat, not because of anything we did with the picture. So it's about 2,000 degrees, and that's the emissions. That's across there, Dave, 4 feet, 5 feet deep. 5 feet, and so that's what you see. So when you're looking at the exhaust coming out of the stack, it's just there's nothing there to see in a warm summer. In the winter, you'll see a little water vapor coming out because it'll condense, the water vapor. That's just before that particular picture. We did find out when we did some of these different sized particles and different fuels and everything else, the small dry particles, we felt a little bit like we were standing behind an F-16 taking off. It was unbelievable how fast it consumed it and everything else. We can't do that anymore. That's not good. This is the plant that we're working at. This was originally the power plant. It's still there. We're inside this part here. That's probably Mike Welding. This is the town manager saying how much he loves us. Dave more than me. And gives you just an idea maybe of the size of it. This is in Greenville, Maine, which is a beautiful spot. That's Greenville. So it's a Moosehead Lake, about 40 miles long. Just a cool place. They have North America's largest float plane fly-in. They had about 300 planes there year before last. Joey Joseph, he's one of the guys that was in this project from the beginning. His lobotomy scars healed pretty well. And there you go. So that's the biochar. After it went up in the plant, the wood went up a conveyor into the machine and rotates. Temperatures are very high at the end. Gas comes this way, the wood goes that way, and it dries it out and then burns it. But what it does is it doesn't do it with oxygen. So it's an oxygen starved, so it doesn't burn like your fire at your house would do. So what you got to do is drive the volatile products off, the volatile organics off of it, and then ultimately keep the carbon. So that process has to be pretty close, because those bags of biochar on their own burn very, very well. They would catch fire easily. Like a charcoal, maybe somebody would say, hey, what's it like compared to, say, charcoal? Not the briquettes, but it's similar, the charcoal will have a lot more volatiles in it. They don't do it quite as intensely in the temperature, and they don't quite care as much about preserving the carbon, but it's a similar kind of process. You know, they're very light, and that, that's, can we,
We can make it there.
yeah, it's a, so this is biochar. Small little chunk, little tiny. There we go. Don, I don't know, can you change your name? I can do that.
I've been called worse.
Okay, yeah, I have too. So this is what I said, it's kind of the microbe. So this is biochar blown up. And you can see all these little porous areas, which is where, you know, fertilizers, microbes, water, they get in there and they like it. So it doesn't release it as quickly. So the water doesn't flow through it. If you take a big pitcher of biochar down to a taper and pour water in the top of it, it doesn't come out the bottom for a little while. It goes through and fills those holes up and gets everything kind of comfortable. That's just a picture of inside the plant. Another one. And it comes so that the wood's going this way, biochar's going down that way with the gravity. For those of you can see, so the wood's traveling up, this thing rotates, it travels up through here, and then the biochar goes down, comes out this conveyor, drops in here, and there's another conveyor that has a small amount here that does the same thing. That's just a picture of the grate where it keeps it going, if you will. So once this process is up and running, it does not use natural gas, oil, or propane or anything to keep it going. It's a little bit unique. There's quite a few other processes that take that exhaust gas that's coming out of here and they make it good by burning propane or natural gas to clean up the exhaust. This uses wood to continue that process.
Question?
Yes, I'm done.
This young man. Is there a catalytic combustor in this operation?
No, there's not.
To get it up to the temperature you need?
Well, to get it up to the temperature, I think you start it kind of like your wood stove at home. David, how long do you burn the propane in there before you say we don't need it anymore?
So every startup, we start up on Monday mornings. So we use approximately 25 gallons of propane one time for about 15 minutes. And the only reason we do that is once we get our combustion process started at the rates far into the machine. Once the flame starts to travel down the barrel of the drum, we're going to have some smoke to begin with. And in order to keep our emissions very clean, we introduce propane at that point and light it off. What that does, it burns the smoke and the other volatiles off. It also starts to draft very, very quickly. So what we're doing is trying to induce that draft right away, because the faster we can do that, the more we get our initial temperatures up to where they need to be.
Mark, also, I think it was the kiln weighs about 50,000 pounds, right, Dave?
Yeah. Yep.
The vast majority of that's refractory. So if it's sitting there, it's cold. It takes a little bit to get it going, not a ton, but once that's hot, that red glow in there, you throw anything in there and it's gone. And when I say anything other than maybe, a big chunk of steel, we've been doing a great job with a local funeral home for, the people, just get, it's a little extra money. Like I said, things aren't all that good. So, yeah, so that's it. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for your great presentation, although count me a bit skeptical on some things.
Okay.
But back to one thing you said, normally we have really great snacks, and thank you very much, whoever used to bring those. And which leads to my question, is you mentioned cows eat it, and I do have my plate with a little tiny fork here. If you ever get trapped in the woods, is it edible for humans? Put salt and sugar on it?
Well, I'm sure you can eat it. I'm just not sure why you'd want to.
Let me ask a real question. How many factories in the US do this? And it's not widespread as far as I know. And what's holding it back? I gotta be skeptical because I'm wondering, Maine is a very environmentally sensitive place. I didn't notice a lot of houses really around the factory. I mean, would you want to live next to your factory?
I wouldn't have a big problem with it. It's not noisy, it's not smoky,
What's holding it back? What's the holdup?
it's not financially.
viable yet. You can say yeah.
I would say that's it. When you look at the number, those pieces of equipment that are out there, there might be 8 of them in the United States. There's a guy in Colorado that does it with a different technology. He's having some great success because of the problems they got with all of the wood that's laying in forests.
You didn't mention big corporate America in this yet. Are they working to there's just a whole host of companies that would love to join this.
Well, but you know, so mentioned earlier the 1,200 megawatt plant, that was about 800 and some odd million dollars. That's what big corporations want. They don't want small things that generate $1 million or $2 million a year. They want us to get to the point where they can see $100 million a year business in either manufacturing or installing these plants and scale them up to a size that they're even more financially successful. And that's the real reason why it's not happening. It is happening on the West Coast because you can also take that power plant that we showed there. That was a biomass, a big building, biomass power plant. That plant would utilize about 250,000 tons a year of wood to generate about 18 megawatts of power. But you can modify the back end of the plant so that you can produce biochar with it. And that's what they're doing in California and Oregon. Company Rogue Biochar has a biomass power plant, and they modified the back end of it. So for them, it's just an incremental cost change, and they can make biochar. But to put a whole new plant in to do it is kind of tough. Corporate America is doing now is the carbon credits. So we just had proposals to Swiss Re, Meta, you know, the old Facebook, and they're down in New York, and they're looking at how can I buy carbon credits. I mean, there's some of them want to buy them for 10 years, but they you know, they're because they made these social, you know, ESG, environmental social governance commitments, and they gotta take care of the carbon footprint. And so it's there. It's just very, very difficult. That's corporate America's jump in. The other side of it is that big projects. I don't know if you've seen air capture projects, you know, where you see massive fans that are going to do all kinds of things inside and re-inject it into the ground. Those are very, very, very expensive, even more so per ton of carbon sequestered than ours are. There's getting some of those because it's a big project, but you know, it's tough. Yeah.
So on a true agricultural rate, what's the application per acre?
Yes.
Could you repeat the question?
He said, what is the rate of application for an agricultural setting? So I'm going to put this on somebody else called a soil scientist. So part of what you have to do with the USDA program is they have a couple big long sheets to check your soil health, and then a couple big long sheets as to what the biochar looks like that you're putting on the soil. And from that, they will then determine the application rate. One of the cool things about the biochar is it stays there, say, for 100 or 1,000 years. You don't apply it at the same rate every year, and ultimately it might be every 2 or 3 years because it stays there. But I'd say, Howard, 10% by volume. So if you're tilling, you know, down 8-10 inches in the soil, you know, you put an application on that. But it's a calculation. It's not something that you just everybody. I will tell you that putting biochar in a pot from Ontario orchards or any place else like that, like a household plant, won't make a big difference because the company that had that plant, they put good soil in there. They got it all fertilizers so that it doesn't die when it comes to your house. They want to make sure that it works. But if you take it out in a sandy loam clay soil, you know, where things have a really tough time growing, that's where it will really excel as an agricultural benefit. So crappy soil, great for biochar. In between, there's other things.
So how much soil potentially can you plant the size of yours fertilize?
How much soil could we do? Another good question. You know, we got a screen of people coming in here. So on a good day, Howard, we could do 15, maybe some more cubic yards of biochar. So if you take that and just do a volumetric, it's 10% by volume. If you just do that on whatever you want, I can't do it right here in my head. Fortunately, I've never been able to do that, so it's not a problem. But like I said, it's 10%, so it's not. It'll cover a cubic yard. Will cover quite a large area. In state, yes. Oh, whoever. Okay. Yes. Sure.
Are other countries doing that?
Yeah, I mean, Europe's way ahead of us in this. So Europe already allows it to be fed to animals. And they do it all the time. They also, it's also used, one of the things I didn't say is it's also being used to make green steel. Carbon, coking coal, the reason they call it coking coal is a very high concentration of carbon in it. It's much more pure than, say, a Pennsylvania coal, so it's easier. But as they go down the road, people are trying to figure out what can I do, so they can add biochar to the steel making process. And they have it done for a long time. They've done it with wood chips. This is just closer to where they want it to be. Their problem is it's just not enough of it around. So
Are you guys getting any government incentives or augmentation?
yeah, he's asked if we get any government help. Yeah, the state of Maine has given us $650,000 out of the $4.5 million we spent on the project. And for the next phase, which we want to put 2 more of these pieces of equipment in, we would go back to, there's a REAP grant, the Rural Energy for America program. There's a whole bunch of USDA, US Department of Defense grant opportunities that are out there looking for. I mean, the dream would be you take 3 or 4 of these, take that exhaust gas, put it into the wood-fired power plant, make more biochar, extremely clean, and then you're sequestering carbon, so you could make carbon negative power. Now, New York and Massachusetts right now, they do not consider biomass as renewable. But I think there's a day coming where they're going to take a look at it and go, hey, that's pretty good. Yes, sir.
Sorry to bother, but it looks like somebody's like texting on the Zoom thing.
Yeah,
See where it says chat?
Yeah, the person just asking, would you be available for more questions via email?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. You got to watch these guys. I mean, that's why he changed his name from David to Don. Yes.
So is your facility a purpose building or was
Yeah.
what was it?
It was a power plant. It was a biomass power plant. So it ran from 1986 to 2006. It had a power contract. So it ran for 20 years. And then when it stopped, they tried a couple different times. But the subsidies for solar and wind are substantial. And natural gas, which isn't up in that part of the woods, but natural gas is just more efficient and cheaper today. So, yes.
I put that gas go scaling it down. I was scaling it up and up. Can I make this in my backyard?
Yes. So what they do, if you Google this, you'll see, I mean, it's a tremendous kind of backyard community. What they tend to do is dig a hole, get the wood going, and then, snuff it out, if you will, and let it kind of smolder. And then when you dig it back up, you end up with, biochar. There's also small retorts, if you will, that can do it. The key is not burning it. When you normally have a fire outside, not in your house, a fire outside, when you burn it, you notice in the morning, it's just gray, powdery talcum powder. That's gone too far. That's just the minerals that couldn't be combusted. Okay. So we control it with instrument controls to get it to the point where those volatiles are gone. The stuff that we don't want in there is gone, but we're not burning the carbon and end up with just minerals.
What's the difference between biochar and activated char?
Well, activated carbon is activated using either steam or chemicals. And what that does is it just opens up those pores in the biochar. So it's a bit more open. They also use a lot of coal, coconut shells for activated carbon because the structure is harder. So when it comes to the air filters and things of that nature, it has a bit better sustainability. No, not sustainability, a little bit better reliability. It's just stronger that way. But as far as carbon content goes, we're pretty close to activated carbon. There's some things we can do that activated carbon isn't quite as good at. So, yes.
It's not charged. It's the problem that it's taking up all the minerals in the soil.
It definitely will take water up from the soil, and then it will take, like the bugs might leave the little grasses, the plants over here because they like this a little bit better. So it takes a little bit to do it. The partner was in there, had an elevated, but still has an elevated garden bed, 2 of them, and he put it in last year in the spring. And he said, "Oh, my garden was really good," but he didn't charge it. So, it got water ultimately and everything else. This year, the one with biochar, he's world record breaking number of cucumbers. I don't even know if he likes cucumbers, but and the size of them. So it takes a little bit longer if you don't do that charging.
So I'm a middle school teacher and I teach in the coastal farm.
I'm sorry.
I'm a middle school science teacher and I teach the farm state, and we have a grow system with red wiggly bins. And we get scraps from the science teacher and we recycle the soil. Would adding this be a good or a bad into our soil?
Absolutely great. You got the red wigglers, which our buddy up in Maine, Newton Pierce, loves red wigglers, and we've talked to him about making the worm castings and everything else.
Do I
Yeah.
do lenses without that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I need a big fan.
All right. And I'll tell you what we do. It's unfortunate we're in Maine, but I go back and forth, as does Dave a little bit. He does more go and a little less back and forth. But if there's an opportunity that somebody wants to do something, I mean, I challenge Kamala and the school too. If you come up with a program, you say, hey, we're getting algae blooms in the pond out here. Let's try some filtration on all those ditches that are out there. We're going to bag up some biochar and we're going to put it across and sample water before and after. We will give you the biochar. We'll get it to you somehow. We'll get it here because we got to do that, huh?
Not that also, I keep putting not that bad. It's carbon, it's a lot of minerals out and they're not getting plants and like that.
I guess that would also be part of the study. It would be there. But what they've done so far is they've found that the stuff that's making some of the blooms come out is dramatically reduced with the biochar. And the biochar ends up being pretty good because all those things that it caught are like, finally a condo. I didn't know where we were going to live. Now they got a place to go. So we really need that. Clarkson University, at Albany, there's a lot of people doing a lot of studying. This person, well, there's two of them. I met her, Kathleen Draper. If you want to pass it around, actually, we'll leave it here. You can have that one. Discusses it. They're in Ithaca. She's in Ithaca with the Ithaca Institute, ITHKA. I can't remember, but and the International Biochar Initiative is another place, another resource to go where they're doing these kind of trials. But commercial quantities of biochar haven't been around, available. On the West Coast, again, we're the only facility in Maine running today, and I bet you in New England, we might be the only facility that's running. So it's early days. Good thing about early days is you're a little ahead of the pack. Bad thing about early days is there's nobody there with you to help you. So, yes, sir.
Does the application of biochar have any effect on the need for crop rotation and scheduling land?
It's going to be more of a soil science. What we're trying to do up there with potato farmers. So potato farmers plant potatoes this year. Next year, they plant asparagus because they're rotated. So we're going to try and get it so that we can see, because they don't make money on asparagus. That's not where the money is. So it should be able to help reduce the need for crop rotation because it holds so much of the good stuff in the soil. But I mean, I'm not the guy. A soil scientist would be able to more accurately. Again, if you're a farmer or you have a garden in the back of the house and you want to try some of this, you have a reason. The USDA is, it's there to do it. But if it's small, we can help you along that way as well. Yes.
Is there any research being done on animals that are being affected in any way by any of this?
I'm sure there is. I mean, there's a pretty big push to get the USDA, a couple other US things to allow trials and tests of this on animal, using it as a mix and animal feed on a small basis. Again, in Bangor, the guy for the USDA up there said, if you find a farmer that wants to dedicate 5 or 10 cows to this study, he said, we will help, push that along. Because it's a real natural thing. If the cow lives better, is healthier, and you reduce the amount of input that you got to put to the feed, vitamins, whatever they give cows. And at the end of the day, like you said, they spread it around the field. So it ends up being a kind of a win-win circular kind of deal.
I'm talking about like the animals that are already there.
I don't know, I would think it would be good for them. I know the chicken houses down in the Chesapeake Bay, we're working with some people down there. So chickens have one way to get rid of their waste. And so that's why it's such a smell, and it's nasty smell, burns their feet and everything else. They're using it in bedding for the grow houses for chickens. Obviously the smell goes down because it's a good capture of that, and then it makes it better for them walking around. It doesn't quite burn, the nitrogen's gone, and then they seem to have a better digestive system with it. But again, that's going to be anecdotal evidence. There needs to be some real hard studies done on it. But yeah, they eat rocks along the side of the road, so I mean, I think a little harder.
Well, they need the rocks, but backing up a little bit, you mentioned human waste.
Yeah.
In passing, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's any possible application for using human waste in this regard.
Yeah.
Turning shit into shinola, so to speak.
Okay, so the project we're on right now, we're in Shinola. Adjacent property up the hill is shit. Okay, there's an old wastewater treatment plant there. There's 5 ponds, big ponds. It's not like a new plant where they run it through presses and everything else. It's kind of like we pump it up. You saw the size of Greenville. You've just seen basically 90% of Greenville in that one little picture. So we have sent samples of that biochar to Clarkson. We have had them, they've combusted it because it has PFAS in it. So built 1976, never dredged. What happens in that process is it goes into the first one and there's bugs and it moves in it, but it comes out the 5th pond, they spray it on 27 acres of land. And guess what's on that 27 acres of land now? Forever Chemicals. So they're in a problem. Last year, the state of Maine banned the landfilling of sludge from their sewage treatment plants in the state of Maine. They're shipping it to Canada. They were doing all kinds of different things, and the state finally said, So they've appointed a PFAS guru, if you will. They've allocated $60 million to try and come up with a way to help solve and or mitigate this. And so we've worked with the Moosehead Sanitary District to say, hey, let's pre-filter the water coming up out of the city, out of the lift stations, before it hits the pond, and catch as much as we can in some biochar. So now you don't have to deal with a massive amount of chemicals and other things that are going through there. And then is there a way, and that's where we came up with Clarkson, is there a way we can take that, combust it, clean it, and turn it into clean biochar? The Professor Clarkson, doctorate in chemical engineering, he's worked on PCBs and dioxins to make catalysts and things. And he's told me, and I had a hard time getting a 2-year degree. It took me about 4 universities. But anyway, that's another story. 900 degrees C, he said, you will find no PFAS, no forever chemicals in biochar. You got to take care of the exhaust gas. It's not much. You got to clean that up because otherwise there will be a small percentage. But keep in mind, this forever chemical problem is there already. Raincoats, Teflon pans, all of those things, they're still dumping it. It's still going in. So there's an opportunity there down the road to try and figure out how to pre-filter and get rid of it as they slowly phase that chemical process out.
Not to mention the dead bodies.
Yeah. Well, those are pretty well gone, Mary. They're not. Yeah, it's not a problem.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think a good last thought is listening to you, I feel like I'm at a live taping of the TV show Shark Tank. So what is the future? How we hear we're researching that, When will we get to the stage where we're really gone viral? I mean, go ahead with your crystal ball.
Well, it is crystal ball. So what I know what's happening. There's another plant that was proposed in Maine. People are looking at it. Financially, it's got to become way more successful to induce people to just go, oh, I'm going to go buy 6 of these. But my gut is in the next couple of years, there's going to be enough of these. So we've got enough feelers out for people that want biochar, potentially, that if any one of them came up and said, we want to buy they'll buy it all. We'll be out of biochar. But it's not, what we do is big in relative size to what's out there, but it's not big enough. Again, that's why the steel business doesn't want to go to green steel. They'd have to modify their process, and there's not enough biochar carbon out there to justify even coming close to it. Another anecdotal thing, a guy I know that's up there, they worked on biochar and activated carbon. He took it to a aluminum company smelting process and said, you ought to do this. The anodes work better. And they said, yeah, it does, but you know, less emissions. And said, well, they're already meeting our emissions. We're not going to spend money doing something we don't have to do. You know, so it's going to take a bit, you know, and I've been dealing with this thing for 4 years. And I was peacefully down in Florida with my lovely wife. My girlfriend had left earlier. And so I was down in Florida and they called up and, it's taken 4 years to get us where we are. And we just started up in July. So we got air permits for this thing based on calculations and stuff. Because there isn't any emissions information from this. We will have it because we've got ports and we're testing and we're going to do that. But so I don't know, 2 years could be aggressive, but I think in 2 years, there'll be enough other things out there. There's incentives, as I said, like the PFAS monies in Maine that can go to help move things forward. And we just got to get out there and beat the bushes. I got to do more things like this. We've got to get in front of school children and say, hey, we'll help you with your projects. And slowly but surely, because it works. It does make your crops better. It does do those things. It helps out. Anybody else?
How much energy does this use per ton?
It uses itself to make it, Mary. So there is no, other than the 25 gallons of top propane.
So you're not using, okay.
We're using, we got connected horsepower, 10 or 15 horsepower connected.
Yeah, our consumption is so low that we run probably 55 to 60 kWh.
So you're not using additional natural gas to get the.
No, once you get this thing, once you get it, that was one of the reasons, because I did go to a number of, there's a guy in Seneca Falls who has a process, it almost looks like a big pizza oven. He puts the wood on and it goes through and everything else, but they have to constantly burn gas to clean it up. This does not. Once we start it up, it's done. So there's, you got, as I said, you can do the life cycle assessment and the data sheet for Pure Earth and stuff, and you got to calculate all of it, but it's not much.